This episode of the Cascadian Beer Podcast has been made possible by the BC Ale Trail. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at thebcaletrail.ca. Welcome to the Cascadian Beer Podcast. My name's Aaron and I'm a Cascadian. In this podcast series, I highlight the breweries of Cascadia, a region that has a strong presence in the international beer scene. Cascadia is a bioregion in the Pacific Northwest and the North American continent. It's made up of the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon, as well as the Canadian province of British Columbia. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That way you'll never miss an episode. I'm in the provincial capital of Victoria, not too far away from friends of the podcast Swan's Brew Pub and Spinnakers, both of which are other historic breweries in the city. But my guest today opened in 1996. Canoe Brew Pub is located in an historic 100-year-old building close to the Victoria waterfront by the Johnson Street Bridge. In recent years, they've had some major renovations done to the space, with a few more on the way. I sat down with their brewmaster.
My name is Cal York. I'm the brewmaster at Canoe Brew Pub.
All right, cool. Beautiful building. This is a massive space. It's kind of tucked away in the back, but you can see your tanks going on there. So what's the size of the brew house?
The brew house is a 20 hectoliter brew house with 5 fermentation vessels and 7 bright tanks. And we actually pour off the bright tanks. So we don't use kegs here at the brewery.
All right, cool. So then the question, how did beer find you?
Beer found me. My background is in restaurant management. And the restaurant I was working at made the mistake and gave me 2 weeks off. And I volunteered for the Victoria Beer Works Society in their first year of working. I came down here and was leading an event, chatted with the general manager here, and then ended up getting a job for the summer as a server and bartender. And then decided I wanted to go to brewing school. So I went over to the Kwantlen Brewing program over in Langley, did the inaugural first 2 years of the brewing program there. So I have a diploma in brewing and brewing operations, and then came back. I was a part-time brewer here, as well as a server on the patio inside in the dining room and all that stuff. And then slowly decided I wanted to work my way just full-time into the back end.
All right, cool. And so how long have you been like the head brewer then here?
I took over as head brewer here in May. So previously I was here for about 2.5 years under Daniel Murphy, who had been here for 7 or 8 years. And then previous to him was Sean Hoyne, who everybody knows owns obviously Hoyne Brewery. So Daniel didn't look like he was going to leave. So I actually went over to Twadogs Brewery over in Saanich for about 8 months. And I was heading up to head brewer there. And then the opportunity showed up for me to come back here and take over operations here, which I just couldn't pass up. It was an opportunity of a lifetime.
All right, cool. And so like it's a massive space. I mean, generally speaking, normal nights, I mean, you're somewhat, full, reasonable, comfortable crowds. Like what kind of styles of beers do you produce to fit in with that crowd that comes here to enjoy your pub?
Yeah, my philosophy is producing beers that are fresh, don't bog you down too much. I like to live a fit West Coast lifestyle. I'm out hiking, I'm out running, I'm working out. I don't want to be hungover the next day. I want to even maybe have a beer after work and then get home and maybe go for a run or something. So I like lower alcohol, refreshing, bright beers though, but lots of vibrancy to them, lots of flavor. And that's my kind of take on it. We produce a vast array of beers. We have from a Helles to a wit beer, and then we have an IPA all the way to a Baltic Porter in the wintertime. So I don't think we really hone in on one region specific, but because of the people coming into our brew pub, we've learned over the years kind of what they're looking for. A lot of people from Seattle and Portland, all across Canada, lots of tourists is our big jam here, right? A huge patio outside. And we kind of cater to them. What are they going to be ordering? And also trying to create some fun beers in the summer. This summer I did some colorful beers. I did a purple blueberry beer. I did a pink, our first kettle sour here. We did a boysenberry kettle sour, and it was a really cool pink color. Just something fun in the summer that really shines on the patio here.
Yeah, right. And do you have any cask engines at all that you work with?
No cask engines. No, our setup is we don't have a cellar that's chilled at all. So unlike Spinnaker's, that they have all their setup over there, we literally just have those 7 bright tanks that are all hooked up to the taps. We have 3 different bars that we pour from to help with alleviating the stress of the servers and allowing them to really give exceptional service to the guests. But so I'm stuck with the 7 bright tanks for the moment. I'm working on maybe increasing our tank volume or tank capacity, and then hopefully we'll be able to offer some more options to people.
Yeah. So like how much of an expansion then are you talking?
I would love to do so if we have 7 bright tanks now, I'd love to do 6 or 7, half of those size. So we're turning over the options that are in them a little more frequently, but it also gives us maybe 6 or 7 new lines on the draft lines.
I'm in conversation with Kyle York of Canoe Brew Pub. I just want to thank the BC Ale Trail really quick. And, Victoria is a real historical hub for BC craft beer. And the best way to discover what else you can find is by visiting the bcaletrail.ca. The BC Ale Trail showcases many parts of the province. And on the website, you'll find recommended itineraries for each region, a comprehensive list of every craft brewery in BC, a calendar of beer events, and a blog with lots of great stories. The regional ale trails include local breweries, pubs, and restaurants, along with other activities the area has to offer. So whether you're planning a weekend trip or just being a tourist in your own backyard, let the BC Ale Trail guide you to your next beer adventure. Arrive thirsty, leave inspired at the bcaletrail.ca. And thanks again, guys, for supporting this episode. Now let's jump back into the conversation with Canoe Brew Pub's brewmaster, Kyle York.
So summertime, obviously busy, tourists, but like you said, fit West Coast lifestyle. If somebody was coming to visit Victoria, what are some of your favorite things to do when you're in Victoria?
East Sooke Park, one of my favorite places to visit in Victoria. The cliff views over the ocean is just gorgeous, and then you can just run around the coast trail there. I do a lot of hiking up Mount Finlayson, biking, the Galloping Goose. I live out in Langford, which is about 15, 20 minutes out of Victoria. So I like to bike in. It's about a 20-kilometer bike ride, bike into work, bike back home. It's just phenomenal. There's so much to do, and you can do it year round. I'm just a little bit of a wuss when it comes to the cold weather.
Yeah, yesterday was blowing a gale. I mean, did you bike yesterday?
I did not bike yesterday, no.
So from here, what's the craziest beer style that you've managed to pull off in this pub? Do you have much room for experimentation? Like apart from that, like blueberry beer that you mentioned?
Yeah, like I said, the kettle sour was the first soured beer we had done here. I kept it as a kettle sour to keep all of the bacteria contained in the brew kettle. We don't have a lot of space. We have a lot of brick. We have a lot of wood. And being a brew pub, we are putting out a big volume of beer that is sitting in a bright tank for an extended length of time sometimes. So I don't want to go too crazy and start accidentally souring anything. We don't have a lot of space to have backup hoses and backup equipment and stuff like that. So we don't have a separate area to do a souring facility. We also don't have anywhere to hold barrels. So maybe in the future, there's options to maybe grab another space somewhere that we can do some barrel aging stuff and have all of our sour stuff there, maybe a little separate packaging line or something. But for now, pretty much kettle sours, I think, is as far as I'm going to go. And I like to keep them just slightly tart, just something nice in the patio, just adds a little bit of a crispness and a tartness to that sunshine.
And so then who's inspiring you to make better beers and stuff around Victoria and the province and whatnot? Do you get to check out many other beers?
Yeah, well, being in Victoria is such a small place, we know each other. We all know each other, right? So I'm seeing what Spinnaker's is putting out, seeing what Swans is putting out. There are 2 closest. Phillips, they just opened a new tasting room. It was about a year ago, I think. And honestly, it revitalized my interest in them. They've been putting out some small batch stuff that's really cool. So I've been seeing kind of what they're doing. Obviously, checking out Instagram, seeing what the really hip Vancouver market's doing, and just trying to keep up. And we know that we're in a little bubble here, so we're a couple years behind Vancouver, which is probably a couple years behind Portland or something like that. So seeing what's coming up through the pipeline is really useful, and then kind of catering our recipes to that is the plan. So. And
what would be some advice that you could give an inspiring brewer to make better beer?
I think just getting people to taste your beer, taking constructive criticism. You can't learn anything if you do everything right every time. I mean, I'm presenting my beers to the management team here and our staff, and I get better feedback just going to the guests that are sitting at the tables and be like, "Hey, what do you think?" And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Usually it's good. I'm not gonna lie. But taking that feedback and changing it in your next recipe. The bonus of being the brew pub is we're not packaging a lot of stuff. So consistency wise, I get to play with recipes from batch to batch to batch, and can always honing in and always changing it just slightly to really dial in everything that I've where I want it to taste like. So.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Kyle, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Big thank you to Kyle. Really appreciate his time. And it's such a beautiful space. And I'm looking forward to see the further developments that I have in the works. And you know what? I'm going to hit that patio in the summer. I love going to Victoria, and I'm definitely going to be back on that patio in the summertime. Big thanks again to the BC Ale Trail for making this episode possible. Check out everything they have, including previous BC Brewery episodes of this podcast, on their website at bcaletrail.ca. If you want to follow this podcast along on social media, you can. We're at facebook.com/Cascadian Beer, on Twitter at Cascadian Beer, and on Instagram at Cascadian Beer Podcast. For more episodes of this podcast series, subscribe in your favorite podcast app or hit the website cascadian.beer. Thank you so much again for your time. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, remember, support your local.